For watching this video. This is Jennifer McNeely. I'm doing this for EDU 585 at Georgetown College with Christelle Brody. And this class is about ESL leadership and advocacy. And I'm here today with Miss Kelly, who's a colleague of mine here at Dunbar High School. And we're going to talk a little bit about ESL leadership and advocacy for our students and within the school. So first of all, Miss Kelly, let us know a little bit about you.
Okay. I went to Cinder College and I studied abroad in Mexico and I studied abroad in Costa Rica. In both areas, I lived with homestays. So I lived with Costa Rican family, I lived with a Mexican family, and really got to immerse myself in the culture.
Awesome.
I also taught in both areas. I taught kindergarten at primary school in Mexico twice a week, and then I taught kindergarten in a Costa Rican village, which was crazy because it was only for 1 week and they just thought it was crazy, but it was crazy. Wasn't very organized, but I had that experience as well. So I've seen the different education systems because they're very different. Well, there's similarities, but they're different in those two countries. I've also taught in Ghana and Africa. I took an education class in Ghana.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I taught a kindergarten class there of 80 students. The kindergarten class was 80 students. So
Wow.
That was also very crazy. It was a month-long trip, and we didn't live with homestays there, but
okay.
Yeah.
So you got to have some good Mexican food when you were with the Mexican family?
Yes.
I miss that from El Paso. I
Yeah.
won't eat Mexican food anywhere else
Yeah.
now because I've been spoiled.
Well, I was in Merida, and the food is very different
Right.
from the border
Right.
food. It was not spicy, which
From
I don't
Chihuahua.
like spicy. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
different. But
I
it
like
was
the spice.
really good. It was really good. Yeah.
That's awesome. That sounds really good. You've had a lot of really good experience with different cultures. And so I wanted to know from you, what do you know about the ESL program here at Dunbar?
Okay. I know that our ESL program has 10% of our entire student population, which is, I think, the largest in our district.
And growing, yes.
Yeah, and growing. And outside from that, since I'm a Spanish teacher, I'm also interested in, there's a 20% Hispanic population at Dunbar,
Right.
too, which is not all of our ESL students are Hispanic students.
Right.
So that 10% combines with other students. What else? I know that we use WIDA.
Yes, we'll talk about that.
And I know there are different components to that, but that is a national-wide program
Right.
for placing students where they need to be based on their language fluency.
Right.
What else do I know about our ESL program?
How do you recognize an ESL student? How do you know a student is ESL or an English language learner, culturally and linguistically diverse? How do you know that they are one of those students?
Okay, so usually before school has even started, I look at our Infinite Campus to see if they're listed. Now, there's students throughout the year that are thrown into my class that
Right.
in the middle of the semester, it doesn't matter what point we are in the school year. They come into my class and I can tell based on how they interact with other students, whether they're able to communicate with other students, if they're an ESL student, if it's not listed in Infinite Campus. Then I give them directions in English just to see how they respond to that, and most of the time I get this like deer in the headlights look, like I don't know what you just said.
Right.
So then I switch, and since they're in my Spanish class, I switch to Spanish, and then they immediately respond with, okay, I understand what you're saying.
Right.
So that's how I recognize, and most of the time, as soon as if they're coming in the middle of the year, their language, their limited English proficiency is lower than the students that I get at the very beginning of the year because of maybe migrant families or whatever situation they're in. They're coming in the middle of the year, the middle of the semester, then their language proficiency is lower than other students.
Right.
Is what I've recognized just this year with me. So
You have an advantage, I think, because the majority of the English language learners that you receive are native Spanish speakers.
yes, yeah,
So you're able to communicate with them a little bit
yeah,
better
yeah.
than like with me, I receive a lot of students that come from parts of Africa, but they're not all French speaking.
Mm-hmm.
But they for some reason they tend to be, they might speak Swahili or Lingala, but they're in my classes, and it's you're learning French too on top of learning English. It doesn't quite seem fair. So
yeah.
So,
And that's difficult too. And I did have one LEP girl at the beginning of the year who her native language is Mandarin. She was
I remember that.
LEP
Yes.
with English.
Yes.
And then Spanish, it was just overwhelming.
And they're so incredibly difficult. So,
yeah.
You know, in several bilingual programs, it's actually incredibly important to recognize what the kids can do in their native languages. You know, some early bilingual programs, it was all about we're not going to let them speak any of their own native language. Did you know that in the 1960s in the Rio Grande Valley, kids could go to Spanish detention for speaking Spanish in classes?
I watched a movie. What was it called? Walkout is what the movie's called. And they talked about it was in the 60s. Yeah, it was in the 60s.
Right.
And the students staged walkouts across, I think it was across California and across that region. I guess the Rio
Probably
Grande,
in Texas.
And they would walk out, the whole population, the student population would walk out of the school because they were being discriminated against.
Wow.
For using Spanish at
Good.
school.
Good for them.
Yeah.
Because, you know, what we realize is that the kids have a lot of cognitive academic language proficiency, CALP, that they can bring from their other countries. And since you've been there, you've probably since you've seen how the education system works in other countries, you know that. Like some of those things, now there are things that are very different. Maybe they have to ask to go to the bathroom here where they didn't have to there, or the lunch schedule is very different, or you know, the homework, not everybody has this efficient and quick way of doing homework. Some people really take their time, right, in certain cultures. So kids can learn what's the basic interpersonal communication skills, BICS, pretty quickly within a couple of years. That's where you see kids start to become a little bit more talkative in class, or become a little bit more talkative at like lunches, or smaller children who become a little bit more sociable in recess or something like that. But then when it comes, so you think they've got the English.
Exactly.
And then you give them directions, or you have them work on something that's academic, cognitively academic, and that's where the deer in the headlights and I don't know what you just said and that type of thing. So, you know, that's something to definitely keep in mind, and that's a big struggle. So a lot of people just think it's throw them to the wolves, right? Throw them out into the river. The kid's going to learn how to swim, and that's not exactly the best thing to do. So sticking with them and giving them the opportunity to use their own language in journaling, or give them their own language in like a visual type of thing. They, you know, I didn't bring any today, but I can give them to you if you want. Thinking maps, those thinking maps I've shown you before, you know, where a circle maps, they define in context. So maybe they have the English word in the middle. It's a brand new word for them they're trying to learn. But they can put their own words in their own language for their own definition, their own understanding. Or they can put pictures in there, you know, that type of thing. So letting them use their own language, communicating in small groups, maybe about, we're going to have a discussion about this in our group in our language, but then they're going to branch out and they're going to go with other groups, and they're going to talk in English, and they're going to practice, right? So it's just not English is the only way for it. It's what can you bring to the table, valuing their culture and valuing their language as an asset instead of a debit, right? Instead of a problem. So you mentioned WIDA. And WIDA, you know, has 6 different proficiency levels. So the first being that they just don't know any English at all. They walk into the door and nothing. Up to level 6, which is most of the time our students at high school, if they come in here at a low level 1 proficiency, they're not going to make level 6. It's just too much for them. You know, that's where you start talking hypothetical and conditional situations and, you know, really high level stuff. So our kids usually, you know, 1s, if they come in as a 1, then we definitely have some work that we have to do with them to get them up to where they need to be. So here's the WIDA can-do descriptors for the levels of English proficiency, English language proficiency for K through 12. So I wanted to give you a copy of that. You said you'd done some training before, but I wanted to make sure you had a current copy. And then also there's this one in Spanish. So awesome. I would really love to, at some point in time, somehow see those translated for our students who speak languages other than Spanish. So Mandarin, we have some Japanese students. We could get some Lingala. I think it would be really, really cool. I just don't know exactly how to go about doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
that'd be a lot.
If anybody has any ideas, let me know. So the other thing that we were talking about, the ESL program here, and like you said, we do have an Infinite Campus. Sometimes all of the information isn't in at the very beginning of the year for us, for our ESL students. Some of them we know and they've carried over. Some of them are brand new, depending on what we teach, right? And so then we look for that deer in the headlights look, and how are they responding. But our ESL department is growing. We only have 3 full-time teachers and a part-time teacher, but we're adding another part-time position next year to help collaborate in some of the other, like, quote-unquote mainstream classes. And so when a student fills out their registration form, they fill out a home language survey. If the district sees that they speak anything other than English as a primary language at home, they're sent to district office where they do the WIDA Access Placement Test, the WAPT. So they take that down there, and based on what their scores are, depends on where the ESL teachers are going to help the counselors put them into classes. So the ESL teachers are very involved in scheduling. So if the student, once the student comes, before they ever get into any of their classes, before they ever worry about any of the academic stuff, one of the things I just absolutely love is our ESL department, our ESL teachers have created a shadowing program. So they put a brand new student with another student who's already been here, who knows the routine, and is comfortable and has a pretty good English proficiency level. They put that student with the brand new student, the newcomer, because if they speak the same language, and then that person kind of shows them the ropes. So for 2 full days, because we have block scheduling, the A day and the B day, they follow them around for a full A day. They go to all their classes. They show them how to take the bus. They show them how to go to the cafeteria. And then they do the same thing the second day, since it's a different set of classes. So they do the whole thing again. And because they've had kids who have not gotten on the bus, gotten on the wrong bus, and the ESL teachers they're the ones, they feel personally responsible for making sure these kids do it. So I think the shadowing is an absolute fantastic way. We have 5 lunches. It's 25 minutes. It's really fast. We've got 2,400 kids within the school, 2,300 kids within the school, not all at lunch at one time, but, it can be really overwhelming. And so I think that's I've really enjoyed it. And I've had a couple of those kids, the newcomers who have come in here, who have shadowed, and they still see me. And they might not be in my classes, but they see me and they just, they recognize my face. And they're like, hi, and they wave to me and they say hi.
Oh, that's funny.
Seeing how their English is developing, it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
So the other thing that they do once they have the newcomer, the ESL teachers have provided this cheat sheet for the counselors. So the counselors have this, and they are able to see what WIDA scores go to what classes. So what students with what level proficiency go to what classes. So they do have a math strategies class. It's a math class taught by an ESL teacher. So again, she takes what they already know math-wise, but then just transfers it into English and into an American, as much as possible, an American school system. They have an English 1 class, English 2, Algebra 1, and Social Studies. They have all the core content classes, but that's usually where it's either taught by the ESL teacher in English, but it's a modified class to accommodate all non-native English speakers, or that's mainly how they do those. And then on top of it, they have, if their score is a little bit higher, then they'll have them placed in mainstream class, but with ESL, those ESL teachers go and collaborate with them in the science class or in citizenship or something like that. And then they're there with to collaborate and to help out with the ESL teachers, with the ESL students. So I think this is just a really, really cool thing. Again, I'll show it to you, and you can have a copy of this if you want to see it.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really great deal. And depending on the proficiency level of the student, depending on their grade level, there's electives that they can have and things like that.
That's what I was looking at here were the electives, because
Yeah.
I've heard some teachers who teach graphic communications and Microsoft applications, and their frustrations with there's no way that this student can be successful with the material that we're doing in this class.
Right.
And it's hard because some of these cultures they're coming from, maybe this is the first time they've gotten to play on a computer and have the freedom to just do what they want.
Yep.
So I've heard in those classes they just get them on a typing website,
right,
and they just practice typing.
They practice typing,
which is and I was looking at the Spanish speakers into Spanish 3 or 4.
Right.
I just teach 1 and 2, and I've got kids that are fluent. And I don't know, it's hard to get them after the schedules are set and they come in. It's hard to get them where they need to be.
Right.
And
if you have your transient families, your migratory families, that can make it difficult because we also have caps on the classes. So in your 3 and 4 classes, you already have a lot of students who are taking 3 and 4. And then on top of it, you have native speakers. And if you put them into the 3 and 4, I mean, our teachers are getting 36, 37, 38 students in a class.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it becomes really difficult as well, where do we put them?
Yeah.
And then it's not always, unfortunately, what might be best for them.
Right.
Yeah, so one thing maybe for my capstone I'd like to look into is maybe creating an intro to technology class for ESL students.
Yeah.
That literally just starts with, this is a mouse, this is a computer, this is a, whatever, and going from there and then trying to, because some of our American-raised students don't know how to open OneDrive and upload a folder to OneDrive, and they know what OneDrive is and it's somewhere in my email and whatever, but how do I upload? What do I do?
Yeah.
They don't even know how to do that. So I think that would be a really good idea, because you're right, we can't make assumptions that they know about computers if they're coming from war-torn Rwanda. So all right, so one thing that I noticed is you participate in a couple of the programs that are here on campus for ESL students, for not just ESL.
No, it's not exclusive.
So explain that to us a little bit.
Okay. So I got involved this is my first year at Dunbar, so I immediately started to get involved with SHIP, Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, so SHPE, SHIP. And first semester we took a trip to Baltimore for a SHIP Junior. It's technically a SHIP Junior chapter that we have here at Dunbar, because once they go on to college, then they can join a SHIP chapter wherever their college is.
Oh, cool.
So we went to a nationwide SHIP conference in Baltimore, and we went to Johns Hopkins University and toured and did a little challenge. It was like I really don't know what they were doing, because I'm not a techie type person, but it was like a computer programming challenge, and they competed in groups against each other. It was really cool to see. They were very very involved with it. And I guess the student population makeup of this group, it's not exclusive to ESL students,
right?
But it is a great outlet for Hispanic students, because a bunch of the kids have said to me that they're there's not a place for us, basically. There are all these societies and all these groups, like the Society for Young Doctors, or what is that, medics, or something like that, and Math Honor Society, Spanish Honor Society. They could do, but it's only for students who have so many years of Spanish, and most of the time
maintained a grade level,
maintained a certain So they've expressed how there's not a place for us. But SHIP is a place where even if they're not into engineering or sciences or technology, they're all friends, and they all just want to hang out together.
Right.
And we take these trips and show them what college is like, not just the engineering side of it, but college in general. We took tours, and they all had questions about, well, what's your freshman year roommate like? What's your living situation? And just putting them in an academic environment where they can ask these questions and feel comfortable with each other to ask questions and enjoy it. So That's what SHIP is. And
Okay.
just on a week-to-week basis, we have meetings, and they have translated things for the receptionists because they always have issues with trying to communicate with families. So they did a little cheat sheet on how to communicate with people that walk in. What else do they go to the elementary school and the middle school, and they do activities with I don't even know what groups they contact the science teachers there, and they tell them they're going to come after school one day, and they do this, like, they create they did this little light thing with electricity. See, I'm really not
right.
but they do little projects with them, and that gets them engaged with other parts of the community too.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So you have the Society for Hispanic Professional Engineers,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's another group that we have on campus called Latino Outstanding Leaders.
Latino Outstanding Leaders. That sounds
Latino
right.
Outstanding Leaders. So my question for you is, what is the difference? I know you explained this to him on the first day of school, and I thought it was fantastic. What is the difference between the term Latino and the term Hispanic?
So Hispanic means that you speak the Spanish language, and you Spanish, right? You speak the Spanish language. Latino that's talking about where you're from. So if you are from Latin America, so all of Latin America, North America, Central America, and South America, then you are considered to be Latino. So not all Latinos are Hispanic. Did I say that right? Not all
Hispanics are Latinos.
Are Latinos,
right.
Yes.
Because you have Puerto Rican or Cuban
absolutely.
or somebody like that they're Hispanic,
mm-hmm.
but they're not Latino.
Or you're from Spain, and
right.
you would not be Latino. You would be European.
Right.
But you're from Spaniard, you're Spanish, but you're Hispanic as well.
Right.
So, yeah, because I know a lot of kids come in here and they assume, they assume that if you speak Spanish, you're from Mexico.
Right. Yes.
And
I know.
speaking Mexican.
Yes.
Is a term that I've heard, which it just makes me so mad.
Yes.
No, Spanish is the language,
right.
And then you can identify as a Latino or Latina, and then you can also be Hispanic.
Be Hispanic.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think that was great. The first day, because I had never, and you don't want to say the wrong thing, and you don't want to be insensitive, or you don't want to be stupid. And so I really, really appreciated that. I thought that was a really great description to help your students understand the difference between them.
Yeah.
So, because the cultural sensitivity is really important.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was going to tell you about the advocacy. I really love that you're involved in it and you're interested in it, and that's the reason why I chose you for my video to talk to you and kind of talk to you about advocacy, because I feel like you're a young, new teacher. You're excited and you're interested in trying new things and trying new challenges and things like that. And so that's why I wanted to talk to you about advocacy. Do you plan to continue with those two programs? Is there anything else that you're interested in developing or starting here at Dunbar in your
Yeah. tenure? I haven't really thought much about what I would develop in the future, but for our Hispanic student population, we have SHIP, we have LOL, and we have LSTEAM. We have a lot of options for them,
right.
But I feel like we don't have much for kids who aren't interested in science or technology.
Right.
Like LOL, kind of, but if they are interested in their culture, if they're interested in their language and the English language and like writing or creative writing. I was really interested in poetry when I was at Dunbar, and I think there was a Latino literary magazine that I bought from Amazon.com when I was in college, because I wanted to read something, and it was from Dunbar. So I don't know who would be heading that up now. But I think that would be something that I would be interested in.
That would be great.
Giving them an outlet where they could feel comfortable expressing their Latino or Hispanic, or however you want to define it, their
right.
cultural background and their experiences, and then because a lot of them, there's a conflict because they go home and they're one way and they come here and they're another way. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's across the board with a lot of students, not necessarily right. ESL students, but I think particularly for ESL students, the language is different, the culture is different.
You're right.
So
the expectations too, it's like, well, I go home and I do these things, but I come here and I do these things, and my parents expect this here, but my teachers expect that there, and it can really definitely be a lot to take in. And if you're trying to struggle with and that's the thing we have to remember, is that it's not just about the language. It's hard enough they're learning English, and English is a hard language, but they're also learning a culture.
Yeah.
They're also learning
what's appropriate
behavior, exactly, and that's really, really difficult. I wanted to tell you, there's a couple of books that we read for this class, and one of them is this one right here, written by Dr. Brody, actually.
Oh.
And it's Explain This to Me, Our U.S. School. And I think that myself, being a native-born American, I've been in school, I've had children in school, that I just take things for granted, like, registering or sending money for lunch or extracurricular activities, like, duh, right? And you don't think much about it. And this actually really breaks down a lot of things. How do you register for classes, and how do you go and visit the school, and what about parent-teacher conferences and things like that? And it's actually been translated into both English and Spanish.
Oh, cool.
And so, again, this would be something that I would really love to see translated into other languages, and maybe having this as a guide in our front office, in the central office, or something like that, some type of guide like this to just really help parents understand how a school day works or how a school year works,
Yeah.
And it breaks it down at some places you got to ask to go to the bathroom. And you know what? In high school, too, it's difficult because some teachers are different throughout the classroom. So I might make my kids ask me in French to go to the bathroom, but another teacher just says, go when you need to, and it's, so it can
and they'll get mad if you ask
them. Right. And it's, what are you asking me for? Just go to the bathroom. Yeah. So it can be really confusing and really frustrating, I'm sure. Yeah. And not just starting a new school, but starting a new culture and starting a new language. So, that's a book that maybe if you're interested, you can borrow it or look into it.
I would like that.
And this one is actually a combination of a lot of the stuff we've done in the classes that that I've been taking so far. So this just starts from the very beginning. It talks about phonics, and it talks about literacy. It talks about it's a history of a little bit of the language, orthography. It also talks about bilingual programs, the different kinds of bilingual programs that there are. It talks about education issues. It talks about the laws, No Child Left Behind, and those types of things that we have to struggle with. I told you about the law in the 60s, the kids would have Spanish detention and things like that. So if you look through this, I have lots of things underlined and lots of things lots of notes and things in here, but I thought this was really, really great. And it does say the complete reference guide. So sometimes I get a little frustrated because I feel that these are, a little utopian. It's like, oh, you should have a bilingual counselor who administers psychological tests, and I'm like, well, what are they going to be bilingual in? Yeah. Am I going to have 7 counselors or 20 counselors or however many for all the languages that we have? And then another thing is sometimes I feel like it is specific to Hispanic students. Yeah. So, do this in Spanish or translate this into Spanish. Well, what about our Chinese students? And what about our, students from the Congo and that type of thing? So sometimes I just feel like those kids are left out. And so that's the focus of my project. You mentioned LSTEAM, and LSTEAM is the Latino Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math group. Yeah. So because we have the Math, Science, and Technology Center here at Dunbar, it's an accelerated program for students interested in careers involving math, science, technologies, engineering, and medical. We have a lot of kids who want to be doctors or surgeons. We have a lot of kids who want to be engineers and things like that. And so in the MSTC program, not everybody gets into that. It is based on academics, and you have to have referrals and things like that, references. But we have a lot of students who are interested in those types of careers. So LSTEAM was created, the Latino group. And so my idea was kind of like, well, in talking to my ESL teachers, I said, well, I don't want to redo stuff you guys are already doing. So what is something that we can do? And the ESL teacher said, well, we don't really have anything for our African refugee population. We don't really have those kinds of groups for them to show support for career and for education, you know? And so my suggestion was maybe to create a program for those students similar to LSTEAM, in which we can contact, there's a guy in the LOL group that you have who is actually a colleague of my husband's, Steve Alvarez. And so he is a professor of rhetoric at UK, but he is Hispanic, Latino, I believe. And so he comes sometimes to the group and he talks to them. So I would love to find some, you know, we have lots of colleges around here, and I'm sure we have lots of people from all over the world who come here. So UK is so big. I would love to contact some of them. You know, do we have some African studies teachers? Do we have other types of teachers who come from African countries that we could get in as guest speakers? You know, what about companies that we have around town? We can contact them, and hopefully, you know, maybe be able to find someone who also could speak to those students who maybe experienced that. You know, they came from the Congo, or they came from one of those kind of Rwanda or something like that, and they could come and talk to the students about their careers, their education, you know, what they did, how they hopefully made things better and things like that. So that's my advocacy plan, is creating that. Maybe they meet once a month. The ESL teachers have told me that they would provide interpreters. And so that would be fantastic, because I would want to kick it off kind of with a parent night. And they just had an LSTEAM parent night about a month or so ago.
Which went great.
Yeah, that's what I heard. It went really, really well. They had, now it helps, they had an interpreter, I believe, because it was Spanish.
Yes.
So it would be a lot more difficult, because we would have to have Kinyarwanda, Kirundi, Lingala, Swahili, you know, French. We have some students from Mali who speak French. So, you know, we have a lot of students who come from countries in Africa that would, you know, require more translators, more interpreters. But I have been told that we would provide interpreters. So I'd love to kick it off with a parent night, and use that parent night as an opportunity to kind of help them understand, how do you contact a teacher? You know, maybe using something like this is, you know, starting out with explain it to the school. Now let's help your child understand education, and how can we help your child appreciate and move on, and secondary education, and those types of things. So because the Latino group is called LSTEAM, I had an idea of maybe calling it the A team. And so if you're much younger than her, you might not even know what the A team is.
No.
So Google it. It's Mr. T and the A team, and they fought crime, and they were a great group.
They're the good guys.
Yeah, my husband loved the A team. So they were the good guys, and they worked really hard, and they were the good team. So I thought the A team would, I don't know if that's okay, if it's appropriate, but you know, hopefully it's being first and putting them first, and that would be my hope. So do you have any questions for me?
I don't think that I do.
Okay.
I think do I have any questions?
I know. Do you have any questions?
I did have a question actually about the WIDA scores.
Yes.
Because I would love, just as a Spanish teacher who I have LEP students in my classes, I would love to be able to look at their WIDA score.
You can.
It's in their LEP?
Yes.
But many of my students they're just flagged, or do I have to?
No, you have to go in. I'll show you. I'll show you on Infinite Campus. But it is on Infinite Campus. You can access their WIDA scores. Now, I don't think the most recent ones from January are in yet, so it would be a year behind. But hopefully the goal is at least one level per year is the hope. Okay. So
gotcha.
And then once they reach the 4, they're pretty much quote unquote mainstreamed.
So they can transition.
So, right.
I have a student who, she speaks English eloquently, and it's not just conversational English. She can speak it academically as well.
That's good.
And she was in the ESL program until last year.
Wow.
She was like, I don't know why I was in there. I could speak English. So I just wonder how because 4 I guess it just took her a while to be transitioned out.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe so. I don't know. So, anything else? I think
we've covered a lot.
We've covered the gamut,
I
think.
We've done well.
I think I have a fantastic advocate right here. I think she's going to be fantastic we're going to be a good team.
Yeah.
We're the A team.
We're the A team.
We're going to work really hard and advocate for our students because every teacher is an ESL student. ESL and an ESL student, but every teacher is an ESL teacher because the way things are growing, and especially the way that the population is growing here at Dunbar, not only are we increasing our Hispanic students, but we're also increasing the Congolese students specifically over the past few years. Did I say this earlier? This is the third highest population of Congolese students in the country, behind Houston, Texas, and Phoenix, Arizona. So we have a large population of students. It's growing and growing, and we really need to do what we can to, accommodate them and make them feel welcome and help them to keep their language and their culture, but also help them to learn English and be comfortable. So thanks for joining us. Bye.